俺が弱いからいけないんだ。
The story commences with our injured protagonist, Ein, standing at the brink of a cliff. He blames himself for being too weak but finds relief in knowing that this will be the end. Ein challenges himself, questioning the purpose of his existence. In the end, he was never able to accomplish a single thing.
俺はなんで生まれてきたんだろう。生きてきた時間に。
And now it's simply over. In his last moments, Ian thinks about how poorly he was treated and how his life was the worst. People treated him like garbage, and now he will pass away like the trash he is. A while earlier, we watch as a warrior takes on a giant rat monster. He does well to fend it off. But he gets impatient when his partner takes too long with her incantation. She eventually completes it and launches a powerful fireball to absolutely roast the beast.
To them. Fireball!
With that done, the warrior calls on the trash picker of their team, and we see that it's Ian. Ian tries to tell the guy that his name isn't Trash Picker, but he ends up tripping, and Ian's teammates mock him for being so useless. The mage says they should pity him instead because the trash picker isn't a high common class like they are. Instead, he's just low common garbage. Ian apologizes for falling as he blames having to carry everything but Zoe. The warrior tells him to just hurry up and appraise the beast. It turns out that Ian's occupation is the low common appraiser in this world. The goddess of light grants people a jobs at birth, and the goddess of darkness grants them skills. By training their skills, hill people can hone all kinds of abilities, but jobs are passed down through generations and can never be changed. Jobs are divided into 3 tiers. The highest tiers for the rare classes, which only contain a very talented few. This includes people like wealthy merchants and military strategists. In the middle is the high common tier, which includes people like his teammates Zoid and Jolene. They are swordsmen, mages, and others who can fight. Lastly, the lowest tier is low common. These people are the peasants and appraisers who are unfit for battle. Jobs are inherited by children usually so they can carry on their parents' trade. However, in Ian's case, he lost his parents very early so he couldn't keep up the family business. Because of this, he decided to become an adventurer. He had dreams of becoming rich, but things never go as planned. Ian uses his appraisal skill and finds that the rat has an F rating for its rarity.
希少度は F.
That's as low as it gets. But surprisingly, its incisors are AD rank. Ian fails to yank out the tooth, so he has Zoid for some help. Zoid is insulted, as he would never touch a filthy rat. And Jolene reminds Ian that handling trash is the trash picker's job. Zoid hits Ian with a rock and gets even more upset when Ian glares at him. He kicks our boy onto the ground and Jolene reminds him that they are protecting him. She says that Ian should be more grateful, and Ian has no choice but to apologize. He knows that this world just isn't fair, so he gets back to work. His teammates continue to mock him as he simply does his job, and Jolene is disgusted by what he has to do.
モンスターの素材を探して剥ぎ取る。ゴミ漁りくらいだ。
The two can't believe how much of a trash job appraising is, and they can barely watch as Ian must shove his hand into the rat's mouth. Ian can only agree with them because all he is good for is finding and carving materials out of monsters. It's pretty much the equivalent of rifling through trash. Zoid piles on by pointing out that Ian's only part of his party because he didn't want to put disgusting monster parts into his magic bag. The two call him the trash picker boy and tell him to hurry up so they can continue their mission. Ian does as they say because he has no choice but to endure. The only way he can survive in this world is by doing his job and picking through garbage. Moments later, Zoid finds the corpse of a hellhound. To their amazement, Zoid sends the trash picker in to pick for parts, but Ian is hesitant. Gil Dental says that this type of monster should be in this dungeon. Of course, Zoe just tells him to do his job, and the two jerks think about everything they will do with the money. Ian's appraisal reveals that the hellhound's parts have AB rarity, and he starts picking it apart. And Zoe notices that there's another hellhound nearby and excitedly tells Ian to do that one too. Ian is frozen in terror, however, as he's smarter than Zoid, and he notices that something is wrong. The map from the guild says that there should only be a single corridor. Zoe dismisses his concern by saying that the map is simply wrong, but Ian thinks this is a terrible sign and says that they should leave. Zoe disregards Ian's opinion and instructs him to depart independently. He's tired of all the back talk, so he threatens to fire Ian if he doesn't follow them. Zoe says that he won't even pay Ian what he's earned and gives him one last chance to change his mind. Ian is in a terrible position because not many parties will take someone with a worthless job like his. He can only survive by joining Zoid's party, so he has no choice but to comply. Ian is furious, but he knows that life is just not fair. A while later, Zoid is even happier when they find a ton of slain hellhounds. Ian is worried as he wonders what could be defeating these high-level monsters. If they were other adventurers, then they would have collected the items. Zoid isn't interested in using his brain, but Ian is terrified when he points out that several living hellhounds have appeared. The jerks finally realize that they're in serious danger, and Ian determines that the pack must have just been fighting over food. Jolene doubts they could even defeat one of these beasts, so they decide to run away. Running seems impossible as well, but Zoid comes up with a sinister plan. With evil in his eyes, he tells Jolene to cast a paralyzing spell on Ian. Ian is horrified, but Jolene is on board. She apologizes, and she's not ready to die yet, and she paralyzes our hero. She explains that if he's lucky, the paralyzation will wear off soon, and he might even be able to get away before being torn to pieces. Zoid slams his foot onto Ian and tells the pack that dinner is served. Ian can only watch in horror as his teammates say goodbye and they leave him behind. He can barely get the words out as he begs for help, but it's too late. The pack descends upon Ian and begins tearing into him. Luckily, the pain cancels out the paralysis, and Ian is able to defend himself. Tossing his bag reveals all the apples he was carrying, and this buys just enough time to escape. Ian limps away as fast as he can, but he is horrified to find that his treacherous teammates have blocked the exit the traitors trapped him in. But luckily, there's another corridor. Unfortunately, it just leads to a dead end, and the sounds of the hellhounds make it clear that Ian can't turn back either. Going forward means falling off the cliff to his demise, and going backwards means being eaten alive. Ian can only laugh as he is left with a horrible choice to make, and he blames his birth. As a worthless appraiser, he became an adventurer in the hopes of changing his life, but he just ended up being mocked. Ian bowed his head to the mockers, but he still ended up just being abandoned. Ian once again uses his useless appraisal skill, but starts to wonder if it's really to blame. Ian suddenly comes to the realization that he bears the responsibility. He just blamed everything on his job and ran away while placing limits on himself. Unfortunately, it's too late, but Ian has realized that it's all his fault for being so weak. Ian takes the plunge, and we hear what he said at the start. He was treated like garbage, and now he will die like trash. Moments later, we find the unconscious Ian in a strange place as a mysterious woman approaches him. She gives our hero a kiss on the forehead, and he wakes up. A moment later, Ian is stunned to find that he's still alive, and somehow all his injuries have been healed. He is then amazed by a giant tree nearby that is surrounded by giant walls of water, and he uses his appraisal skill and a droplet that falls from the tree. The appraisal results stun our boy as it reveals that it's a droplet from the world tree. His appraisal of the tree confirms that it really is the world tree, but it shocks him because he didn't believe it actually existed. Legend says that long ago, the world had a single world tree for people to produce the magic energy that they use day to day. They breathe in mana from the atmosphere and convert it within their bodies. The tree responsible for that mana is the world tree. Supposedly, it withered away long ago, but no one can figure out how mana still existed. Geniuses assume that other world trees must have existed, but despite exploring every inch above ground, none were ever found. That makes sense because no one would think to look so deep down in a random dungeon. Ian can tell that the tree was what saved his life, so he thanks it, but he hears a voice nearby. Nothing is there, so he just ignores it, and he's surprised that there are no monsters nearby. Ian is left to wonder what his next move will be because he is sure that the traders won't send for help and he has no food. Ian can only move forward, so he thinks the tree one last time. As he leaves, we see that the mysterious girl from before appears, and she's worried about our boy. This is clearly uncharted territory, as none of this was on the guild map. Because of this, Ian fears that there might be monsters even stronger than the hellhounds nearby. Those hellhounds messed him up pretty good, but Ian gathers himself, as he has no choice but to move forward. His near-death experience has given him a new outlook on life, and he vows to never put limits on himself ever again. Armed with a rock, Ian makes his way through the dungeon, but he is shocked by the lack of monsters. This is, of course, a relief, and all that is left is to find a way out. Unfortunately, the nightmare has just begun as something chops off Ian's ear. The pain is unbearable as he tries to get his ear back, but something slices off his fingers. Ian uses appraisal on the attacker, and he's horrified to find that it's an S-rank gremlin. The beast instantly cuts into him, and Ian is reminded that being able to learn his opponent's rank doesn't mean he is strong enough to fight it. Ian tries to escape, but he's at the monster's mercy. The gremlin goes in to end his life, but Ian is stunned to see that it stopped, and it's now trembling in fear. Ian is horrified to see that an S-rank death bear has appeared, and the gremlin is completely crushed. The beast claws right through Aaron's face, destroying one of his eyes, and the bear begins to crush him. Ian gives up as he prepares for death, but a mysterious boy appears to save him. The child expresses dissatisfaction over a girl imploring him to save Ian, and he cautions our hero not to misunderstand her. Ian loses consciousness, and when he wakes up, we see that his ruined eye has been replaced. He is backed by the World Tree, and is done once again to see that his wounds are healed. Ian sees the mysterious girl for the first time, and he is left speechless by her beauty. He compares her to one of the elves you see in fairy tales, and she gives our hero a smile. Just then, some girls called Ian for not drinking the tea her daughter made for him. She wants him to show his gratitude by drinking the tea. But something was distracting Ian so much that he didn't notice the girl holding a cup. Ian wants to know who they are first, but the mother just forces them to drink her daughter's tea. Ian says it tastes delicious, and he thinks it's cute how the girl's ears move when she's happy about him liking the tea. The protective mother is infuriated by this and warns Ian that she will erase him from this world if he even has bad thoughts. It's about her daughter. It turns out that this little old lady was the one that saved Ian. She had no desire to save a lower life form like Ian, but her daughter named Yuri practically begged her to help. The old bag's name is Ursula, and she demands that Ian be grateful. Yuri says that she didn't really do anything, but Ursula never would have rescued Ian if it wasn't for her. Ursula demands that Ian grovel on his knees for Yuri and show some thanks. So he does. He thanks Yuri, much to her delight. Ursula is furious to see him being so casual by calling her by her first name. Ian can't believe that Ursula is a mother, and she reveals that she's also a guardian of the World Tree. This world has 9 of these trees, and the guardians are in charge of ensuring they live in peace. They stay by them to watch over them and occasionally protect them from outside attacks. Ursula has been living in this place ever since the tree first put down its roots. Ian notices that she's been talking about Yuri, and Ursula reveals that Yuri is actually the World Tree itself. More precisely, she is the will of the World Tree and could be considered the tree spirit. Ian asserts that this elucidates the reason for her beauty. However, Yuri is uncertain how to respond to the compliment. Of course, this makes Ursula rage out again, and she warns Ian to keep his dirty hands off of Yuri. She exclaims that she didn't give him back his eye just to stare at her daughter, but Ian doesn't know what she means. Ian only now remembers getting wrecked by some bear and how his eye got shredded to pieces. Surprisingly, he's all healed up now and there's a liver. Reveals that she healed his wounds using droplets from the World Tree. Unfortunately, the droplets can't restore crushed eyeballs, so the girls did something very gracious for him. They actually used part of the World Tree itself to make Ian an artificial eye. Some would call it a prosthetic spirit eye. Of course, Yuri requested this herself as she asked Ursula to use her powers so Ian could see again. Ian can't understand why Yuri wanted to help him so much, so she explains that it was because he thanked her when they first met. Ursula explains that it's very rare for someone to fall in this abyss, but when they do, Yuri always saves them. However, not a single one has ever shown any gratitude. Actually, it's pretty much the opposite. After they find out that she is the World Tree, Most of the ungrateful adventurers begin tearing off leaves and branches to take for themselves. This is why a simple thank you from me made her so happy. Ian thanks her once again, and this makes Yuri go crazy. Ursula says that they are done with saving Ian so he can get lost now, but Yuri's worried. It's really dangerous in the abyss, and she fears that Ian might die. Of course, the tiny old lady couldn't care less, but Yuri wonders if there's something they can do. Ursula reminds her that her oath as a guardian only allows her to stray a certain distance from Yuri. This makes it impossible for her to escort Ian back out. Unfortunately, teleportation magic doesn't work in this dungeon either. Gary begins to cry from the hopelessness, but Ursula can't stand to see her so sad. She realizes just how much her daughter cares for this boy, so she fights her own hate for him and comes up with a solution. She points right at our boy and declares that she will train him herself. She will make him strong enough to leave this place on his own. Ian is shocked to hear that he will actually be able to leave this place alive, and he thinks of the ladies again. Ursula angrily explains that he will be getting personal training from the most powerful mage, so she will not accept anything other than his best effort. Ian refuses to waste this opportunity and vows to do his best. As they head out, Ian wonders if Ursula is just planning to throw him right into battle. Ursula doesn't alleviate his worries, explaining that a leisurely start with theoretical study will take an eternity, and Ian will be an elderly man by the time he graduates. There is no time to waste, as Ursula wants to make him strong as fast as possible. They come to a stop as she tells him to look at something, but he just sees darkness. Ursula scolds the halfwit and reminds him that his left eye was generously replaced with a piece of the world tree. Ian says that his vision hasn't changed at all, but Ursula says that it's only because he lacks awareness, and Ian thinks deeply about how he lost his eye and fell into darkness. It wasn't until Yuri gifted him this eye that he was able to see light again. Everything he will see in this world from now on is thanks to the light that Yuri bestowed upon him. And as he thinks of how grateful he is, Ian's eye begins to feel warm. He opens his eyes and is shocked to find that they seem to be in a completely different place. Ursula is pleased and declares that it's finally time for his training to start. She wakes up a monster like the one that first attacked him, and it quickly attacks. Ursula explains that for step 1, Ian will have to dodge all its movements. Ian wonders if that's even possible, but Ursula reminds him that he has the power of appraisal. He does, but Ian points out that the appraisal skill is only good for getting intel. Ursula calls him a foolish child and reveals that appraising with spirit eye is nothing like doing it with human eyes. Ian uses appraisal with his spirit eye and is shocked to find that it's actually appraising the monster's next move. It's very descriptive, as it says that the monster will use its sight to cut off his right ear, and Ian is amazed. His amazement doesn't last long, however, as Ian just stands there and the beast cuts his ear off as he writhes in pain. Ursula explains that a spirit eye can appraise much more than any human ever could. It can appraise his opponent's moves, and Ian confirms that the beast did just what it's appraised that it would. Ian loses a ton of blood, so Ursula heals him right up. She brought some droplets that Yuri kindly gave her. With these, it won't matter how badly Ian gets sliced up, because Ursula will just be able to heal him right back. She desires Ian to take his learning of new techniques seriously, as there is no time to spare. The monster moves in for another attack, and the end appraisal reveals that it's attacking his left leg with its sight. Unfortunately, there's no way he can dodge it with his current reflexes. It would help if he could also know the exact timing of the attack, but he reminds himself that he has a spirit eye now, and he just needs to think beyond human limitations. Ian tries to use reappraise, and he is shocked when it works. It shows that the attack will end in 5 seconds, so Ian begins counting down. His timing is perfect, and he surprisingly manages to dodge the attack. This is the first time he has ever dodged an attack from an S-ranked monster, and he couldn't be happier. He tries to share his happiness with Ursula, but being distracted only leads to him getting sliced up again. Ian realizes that he can't get cocky, and he needs to work hard. He wants to be able to use a phrase as naturally as breathing. Ian is confident that once he learns to do that, his entire world is going to change. Ian dodges several more attacks, and we learned that it's now been 1 week since they started training. Ian uses his appraisal much better now, but he once again celebrates too early and gets cut up. Ursula's actually glad because pain is the best teacher, but Ian doesn't like how much he is enjoying this. As Ursula heals him, she reveals that Ian has received the passing grade, and it's time to move on to the next lesson. For this one, he will have to defeat the gremlin, but Ian reminds the old lady that he doesn't have a combat job. Ursula, of course, knows this and explains that he won't be relying on skills. It's all about relying on his spirit eye. She hands our boy a wooden sword made from the world tree and reveals that Yuri insisted that it be given to Ian. Yuri bore the pain of snapping off one of her branches just for Ian, so Ursula says that he can't refuse. He can't let it break either. Ursula promises to break him. As Ursula sobs at the wonderful gesture, Ian vows to be careful with it. And he thinks Siri just, and the monster comes at him again, and Ian uses a phrase to determine when and where it's going to attack. Ian thinks it will be as simple as waiting for the perfect time to strike, and he begins his countdown. The perfect time comes, but he ends up missing. Ursula explains that he's too slow, but she doesn't give him any advice. Ian's next idea is to hold his sword where it's going to attack, but that doesn't work either. He remembers that the monster is a living creature with a brain, so it makes sense that it would dodge when it saw a weapon. Ian becomes frustrated as humans and spirits don't see things the same way, and he just isn't getting it. Luckily, his instructor finally helps out and reminds him that moves are not the only thing his spirit eye can appraise. Ian thinks carefully and notices that appraise also reveals the trajectory of his opponent's attack. Instead of using his normal appraise, Ian remembers to use his spirit eye, and he uses super appraise. Ian is stunned as the gremlin has stopped moving, but he realizes what is really happening. When he appraises the trajectory of an attack, he gets to see the opponent's move in slow motion. This allows Ian to finally land an attack, but he is stunned to see that he defeated the gremlin with one swing. He realizes that while everything seemed to be moving in slow motion, he was still moving at normal speed during appraise. This amplified his speed in real time, so his attack struck with a ton of force. Ian celebrates his first time defeating anything, and to make it better, it was even an S-rank monster. Ursula scolds him for the millionth time after celebrating too early again, and she explains that this was nothing. For the next part of his training, he will have to defeat all the gremlins in the area nearby. Yuri hopes that Ian is doing okay. A while later, we return to our boy to find that he has improved greatly and defeated all of the gremlins. As for the next part of their training, Ian will have to appraise the gremlin's ability and make it his own. Ursula explains that humans can acquire skills by learning them, but monsters are born with innate abilities. Ian is confident he can appraise abilities, but he seriously doubts that he can take them. Ursula calls him a silly kid and reminds him that appraisal has always been about reading information on an opponent. The user understands the information and gains knowledge from it. However, now that Ian has a spirit eye, he can do more than just gain knowledge from that info. Now he can also gain experience. Ian gives it a try on one of the corpses, but this makes him feel intense pain as he screams in agony. Ian describes it as information being pounded directly into his brain. Ian wonders if he has the abilities of the gremlin now, so Ursula tells him to test it out. Ian finds that he now has incredible speed, but his body isn't able to handle it all. All of his muscles are completely torn, but Ursula says it's to be expected. She heals him and just tells him to keep running. She explains that you don't just use your legs while running, you use your entire body. Also, muscle fibers get stronger every time they tear, so he just needs to keep running. Ursula laughs like a maniac as she says that he just needs to endure this pain a few 100,000 times, and he will have a body that can withstand any kind of speed. Eventually, after days of running, Ian's muscle fibers stopped tearing, and he was able to build a strong and flexible physique. Ian's voice seems to deepen as he's much more confident now, and he thinks he might be ready to take down a death bear. Ursula reminds him not to get too full of himself, as there is still a long way to go. Ian gets pretty down on himself, but Ursula decides to help him out even more. She really hates to do it, but she will now let Ian appraise her ability. He wonders what it is, so she gives him a demonstration. She wonders if he appraised it in time, but Ursula didn't even give him a warning. Ursula explains that what she just used was called a discard incantation. It's an ability that allows a person to use magic just by thinking it. This means they can use it without using an incantation like everyone else has to. It's pretty incredible. So Ursula tells him to just hurry up and appraise the discard incantation and fireball. She does it again, but this time Ian appraises it. He feels immense pain again, and his body bursts into flames. After a quick heal, Ian tries again but only manages to get the discard incantation. After 5 days of training with these abilities, it was clear that it would not be easy. Ian doesn't have a magic-oriented job, so his magical capacity is low and he would collapse immediately. When he was out of magical power, Yuri would use a droplet from the world tree on him. The droplets are amazing as they don't just replenish magical powers. They also increase a person's total magic capacity. The only requirement is that they have to be consumed and the person is completely out of magic, otherwise, the magic benefits don't work. Because of this, Ian had to keep fully depleting his magical power. However, after a month of this, Ian isn't just able to shoot 1,000 fireballs at once, he can also cast mid-level magic. The abilities he copied from the Gremlin and Ursula, his tirelessly trained physique, and his increased magic capacity, not to mention his spirit eyes, super appraised. All this makes him believe that he's now capable enough for the next challenge. Ursula agrees and declares that it's time for Ian's revenge match. They go to find the Death Bear, but Ursula wonders why Ian is so nervous now. Ursula says that while Ian's still pretty weak, he is much stronger now than he was before. It's actually irritating to her how he was able to pick things up much faster than she expected. As long as Ian puts his training to use, she is sure that Ian will win. Ian is glad to see that even she can be nice, but she just rushes him into battle. Ian realizes that he's not his old self anymore, and he regains his confidence. Ian challenges the Death Bear head-on and starts off with his barrage of fireballs. Ursula mocks him for his terrible aim, but he at least managed to make a smokescreen. Ian uses his insane speed to get into position, and he uses super appraise to slow everything down. He follows this up with a windstorm attack and does some serious damage. The Death Bear is really angry now, and Ian realizes that his individual spells are weak because he's not a natural magic user. Because of this, he must make sure his attacks are precise and land directly. One hit clearly isn't enough, so Ian will have to keep hammering the beast until it falls. Ian unleashes his 100-round fireball next, and the bear shockingly collapses from the attack. Ian wonders if death bears were always this weak, but he realizes that he has just gotten a lot stronger. Ian appraises the death bear's corpse and endures more pain as he gains its abilities. Ursula is sure that he's ready now, and all that is left for him to do is to defeat the monsters. As he makes his way to the surface, Ian is shocked, as this means that he has completed her training. Ian returns to say goodbye to Yuri, and Ursula is reluctant to give him a gift that Yuri wanted her to. She gives him the remainder of the World Tree Spirit Core. It's what was used to make his eye, and Ursula will now become a new artifice, a special eye with the rest of the core. Because it's the source of Yuri's power, Ian is hesitant to accept it, but Ursula cautions him against having such a big head. He will only be borrowing it because Ursula put a spell on it so that it will return to Yuri whenever he dies. Ursula implants the spirit core into his eye, but Ian doesn't feel any different. She tells him not to worry. The extraordinary power of his spirit god, I will one day make him weep with gratitude. Ian can't find Yuri to thank her, so she appears and reveals that she's actually inside his eye now, with the whole spirit core transplanted into his eye. It's essentially the same as being the world tree itself, and Yuri can now stay there. Ursula reminds Ian to be grateful, as this means that Yuri will be going with him, and Yuri says that she will be able to heal him. She will be able to use as many droplets as she likes, and she promises to be very helpful. Ian wonders if Ursula is really okay with this, but she is not. She hates having to entrust her precious daughter to some fool, but she has a good reason for accepting it. Yuri has only had her entire life. She has never had a friend, and she's always been lonely. Ian may be a fool, but Ursula can tell that he has a good heart. She has decided to trust Ian and tells him to show Yuri the world with that new eye of his. Ian realizes how important this is, so he vows to take care of Ursula's precious daughter. Ursula gives him a parting gift herself and reveals that it's an infinite storage spell. Just by willing it, Ian can store infinite physical objects inside the seal. The first item she wants them to store is the sword. Yuri provided the materials so she could craft the spirit's sword, and it's all Ian's. Ian is incredibly grateful for the kind gesture, but Ursula says that there's one more thing, and she stabs him in his good eye. Yuri heals him, and Ursula gives him something else. She forces the Philosopher's Stone down his throat. This changes his right eye, and Ursula explains that she established a permanent link with her consciousness. They will be able to communicate, and she will be able to see everything he does. She will be watching closely, and she reminds Ian not to get too friendly with her daughter. It's time to leave, and Ian wonders if there's anything Yuri would like to do after they get out. Yuri says that she would like to see the rest of her family, all her big and little sisters. Ursula explains that the world tree was originally a single enormous tree. However, its branches and spirit core eventually split, and they were hidden in dungeons and separated from regions. This means her family technically all used to live together, but have been separated. Ian has decided what he wants to do. The two of them will travel the world and find Yuri's family. She's incredibly grateful, and now it's time to begin their journey. Outside the room, Ian comes across a fork, but Ursula speaks to him and tells him to go left. She has appraised an escape route for him, so as long as he follows the arrows, he can't get lost. Also, she warns that a monster viper is nearby, and she tells him to get ready to fight. Ian is shocked to see just how much more his spirit god eye can appraise, and he's grateful to have Ursula in his other eye so she can teach him new ways of using it. Moments later, Ian has sliced up the viper, and it's clear that he can easily defeat even S-rank monsters now. Ursula went ahead and appraised its abilities already, and it gives Ian a boost to his resistance. He also receives an ability called Dissolving Venom, which can melt anything. Ian is stunned when he realizes that he didn't feel any pain this time, so Yuri reveals that she healed him of that so he won't get a headache anymore. Ian once again expresses his gratitude, sending Yuri into a frenzy. He eventually comes across a giant door, and Ursula gives him a lesson on dungeons and dungeon bosses. She explains that dungeons are living things that consume humans, and what powers the dungeons is a beating heart. This pulsating heart serves as the labyrinth core. Dungeons cannot allow their hearts to be destroyed, so boss monsters act as guards. Ian must defeat the dungeon boss or the exit will never open, without exception. Dungeon bosses are also incredibly strong. Ian recognizes that the girls have made them strong enough to defeat rank monsters, but they are nothing compared to dungeon bosses. Ian fears what will happen if he loses, but Yuri's right there to calm his nerves. Ursula encourages him as well, but not as nicely, and Ian's confidence is restored. He is no longer the desperate Ian who runs away picking up trash while waiting for death. He is now Ian the Appraiser, who has received the divine blessing of the world tree. Ian walks through the door and finds the heart of the dungeon just as the giant boss monster appears, so Ian has Yuri return to his eye for safety. Ursula points out that their difference in size is too great, so Ian will have to get much closer. Ian closes the gap, but Ursula warns that an attack is coming. He solidifies his arms and uses his superhuman strength ability to brace for the impact. It's a terrifying attack that looks like a falling meteor, and it absolutely crushes the ground surrounding Ian. Ian's clothes get torn as he manages to withstand the attack, and Yuri heals him as he takes incredible amounts of damage. Ian realizes that his old self would have been terrified in this moment, but that's not who he is anymore. Ian pushes the monster's attack back and uses his newly acquired Dissolving Venom ability. This destroys the boss's arm, but Ian must still dodge attacks from the other arm. The boss monster is still incredibly powerful, and Ian realizes that he won't be able to win that easily. Ursula sees this as well, and decides to give Ian permission to use the ultimate tier spell that she taught him. Ian is stunned, but she explains that with the amount of magic power he has now, Ian should be able to cast the ultimate spell once. Yuri will heal him if he collapses from using it, so she gives them permission to go all out. Ian prepares the ability as the boss goes in for an attack, but Ian says it's too late. Ian uses his ultimate Nova Strike, and the giant fireball absolutely decimates the monster. Ian stuns himself after managing to defeat this powerful monster, and Yuri celebrates as she heals him. Ian doesn't take all the credit for himself, however, as he knows he couldn't have done it alone. He thanks Yuri. Ursula doesn't like how close they are getting, and she tells them to hurry up and appraise the boss. Ian gains a bunch of abilities after appraising the golem, but Ursula says that he's not done. He can even appraise the labyrinth core. Ian wonders what will happen if he does, and Ursula teleports beside him. She explains that his left eye is technically the world tree now, so she can teleport to him whenever. Ursula reveals that the labyrinth core is similar to the spirit core, and that she can use it to make Ian's eye stronger. Ian is done because his eye is already high-powered as it is, but it can evolve even further with every labyrinth core. Ian eagerly accepts our offer to implant it now, so Ursula does, and Ian's spirit god eye advances to level 2. Ursula explains that if he continues to defeat boss monsters and absorb labyrinth cores, then Ian can upgrade his eye to even newer heights. After the exit, Ian is stunned when the door closes behind them. It turns out that the loss of the labyrinth core has sealed out the route to the world tree. It's likely that the hole Ian fell down is also sealed now. This means that no one else will ever be able to reach that world tree, and Yuri will be able to live in peace from now on. The girls are relieved, so it's finally time to head back to the surface. Elsewhere, Zoe tells the story of the horrible things he encountered in a dungeon. He cautions all individuals to avoid that location, as it is infested with hellhounds. Zoe says that it would be impossible for anyone to survive, so they should never go unless they want to die. Other adventurers tell him that he's lucky to be alive, but Zoe credits everything to the brave Ian. He lies and says that Ian told him to leave the dungeon while he fights back the hellhounds. The others only know Ian as the trash picker, but Zoe becomes furious and explains that Ian was much more than that. Ian was courageous, and he protected his friends by acting as a human shield. Everyone consoles him, but the evil Zoe knows that it's all a lie. He and Jolene are the only ones that know the truth, and Zoe can't let anyone find out about what really happened. Zoe continues his dramatic act as he apologizes to Ian, and he cries out that they will never forget his sacrifice. Just and Zoe are stunned when Ian appears and wonder what he's talking about. Ian explains that he simply walked out of the dungeon while defeating all the monsters in his way, but Zoe refuses to believe him. Zoe saw the powerful monsters that were down there, so he is sure that Ian wouldn't have been able to survive. Just and everyone wonders why Zoe isn't happy to see that the guy who saved his life is actually alive. Luckily, Ian is there to reveal the truth. He explains that they actually paralyzed him and left him as bait for the hellhound. Everyone quickly turns on Zoe as they beat down on him, but Ian surprisingly stops them. He points out that Alicia is still alive, and that's all that matters. Ian thinks about how Zoe was the only one who let him, a worthless outcast, into his party. Also, because Zoe abandoned him, Ian was able to meet the girls that changed his life. Ian shows incredible growth and shocks everyone as he actually thanks Zoe. The Avengers are stunned that Ian just thanks someone that left him for dead. They realize that he has changed a lot, and they wonder if it's even really the same Ian. Later, we learned that Ian gained even more abilities after defeating a boss in a dungeon close to the capital. His eye evolved again, allowing him to read Annie writing. Unfortunately, there was no world tree in that dungeon. So what's on to the next one? Ursula isn't surprised that they would be hard to find because the world trees are fuel to the entire world. It would be very dangerous if they were too easily found. Ian apologizes as it will take a while to find the rest of Yuri's family, but she's in no rush, and they hear someone calling for help nearby, so Ian rushes over. Ian defeats all the monsters in the area and gains several more abilities for his effort. The girl he rescues quickly takes a lot of talking to Ian, and she even calls him her hero. The guy that's with her reveals that his name is Jasper, and he explains that he's the head of a trading company. The girl hugging him right now is Claudia, the third princess of this land. Back at the estate, Claudia thanks Ian and the girls after they get the formal introductions out of the way. Claudia wants to go back to hugging her hero, but Yuri stops her. Claudia can't understand why, and Yuri struggles to give her an answer. Eventually, she builds up enough courage, and Yuri announces that she is Ian's wife. Of course, Ian is stunned, but Claudia is undeterred, and she declares that she will simply be Ian's second wife. Yuri can't believe that this didn't make the princess give up, but Claudia explains that in this day and age, it's not rare for a man to have multiple wives. The girls argue it out, and Ursula is glad to see that her daughter is making friends so quickly. As they fight, Jasper reveals that he would like to marry Ian as well. His explanation begins by revealing that he's the head of a guild called the Geno Company. Ian is stunned because this guild's products are everywhere. Jasper then reveals his room of precious jewels and explains his mission in life. He has decided to safeguard the gems of this world. Jasper noticed that Ian's left eye is a spirit core, the power behind the world tree. He then explains the legend behind the world tree. Long ago, it stood above ground, but something happened. The demon lord of calamity, called Mctarin, was attempting to destroy the world. In order to seal the demon lord away, the world tree used all its power. Unfortunately, it is said to have withered away after that, leaving behind its spirit cores. Jasper has been searching for a spirit core his entire life, and that is why he would like Ian's hand in marriage. Of course, Ian plans to reject the offer because he doesn't roll like that, but Ursula has a different idea. Jasper spent his entire life looking for spirit cores, so he probably has intel on the other world trees. The old man desires Ian to wed Jasper, enabling him to utilize his wealth and knowledge. Ian still rejects the offer but does tell Jasper that they can be friends. Jasper says that Ian can still live in the mansion, but the girls interrupt to hug Ian. Luckily, Jasper does have information on the spirit cores but reveals that they lie in very dangerous areas. Investigating them is nearly impossible, but Ian still wants to hear more. Jasper is shocked when Ian says that he might be able to retrieve the cores, so Jasper begins preparations immediately. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about this anime recap by liking, sharing, and commenting, and please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 5,000 subscribers.
Take you out.